Okay, so we will be discussing today is about the properties of operations on integers. Okay, so let's start with the first property, which is the closure property. Closure property can be an addition and multiplication. It states that when two integers are added or multiplied together, they remain as integers. Okay, what does it mean? So integers are the positive and the negative numbers and 0. So whenever now you add or multiply two integers, the answer is still an integer. Let's have an example for the closure. So for example, you're going to add 8 and 10. We know that 8 and 10 is an integer, and the answer here is also an integer, which is equal to 18. So that is what you call the closure property of addition. Another example, negative 7 and 2 are both integers. So if you're going to add negative 7 plus 2, you will going to get negative 5, which is also an integer. Okay? Next, for closure property of multiplication, it is just the same. If you are going to multiply two integers, the product is an integer. So this is, remember, we seldom use the multiplication symbol x. So in algebra, we will be using parentheses. And this is read as a times b. Okay? So let's have an example. This is 4 times 8. So 4 is an integer, 8 is an integer. So their product is an integer as well, which is 32. Okay? Another example, negative 5 times 3. So these two are both integers. Of course, their product is also an integer. So yun lang yung closure property. Let's go to the next property, which is called commutative property. So same siya sa closure. We have commutative property for addition and commutative property for multiplication. So what does it mean? Commutative property states that changing the order of two numbers being added or multiplied does not change the value or the answer. Example, okay, pag nag-add daw tayo ng dalawang number at pinagpalit natin yung position ng dalawang number na yon, it does not affect the sum. Okay, for addition tayo. Let's have an example for you to understand. 7 plus 11 is also equal to 11 plus 7. So as you can see, pinagpalit natin yung position niya. On the first given, 7 was the first added. Then in-interchange lang natin siya. So commutative states that changing the order of the addends does not affect the sum. If we will going to check, 7 plus 11 is equal to 18. And that is also the same as 11 plus 7. And that is also 18. So, yun lang yung commutative property. Another example. Negative 8 plus 5 is also the same as 5 plus negative 8. Let's see if they have the same answer. Dapat same yung answer niya or yung sum niya. Negative 8 plus 5, they have different signs, so you need to subtract and keep the sign of the higher number. And that is equal to negative 3. So if you're going to solve this one, that is also negative 3. So see, the sum doesn't change. In the multiplication, it's also the same. Changing the order of the factors does not affect the product. So let's see the example. That is 6 times 4. So if we multiply 6 times 4, that is 24. So, interchange natin. Gawin natin 4 times 6. Does it change the products? The product? Of course not. It's still 24. Okay? So, yun lang yung concept ng commutative. Pinagpalit. Okay? Pinagpapalit. But it doesn't affect the answer or the value of the answer. Another example. So, negative 2 times 3. Let's interchange. Let's make it 3 times negative 2. They still have the same product, which is negative 6. Okay? Let's go to the next property. Associative property. Okay? So, associative property states that kung kanina changing the position, ngayon naman, meron siyang grouping. Okay? Changing the grouping of the numbers that are being added or multiplied does not change the value. Okay? Let's have an example for addition. So, for example, numbers na lang para mas clear sa inyo. Ayan. 5 plus 4 plus 3. So, ang groupings natin ay 4 plus 3. So, it means, pag pinagpalit daw natin yung groupings, hindi daw mag-change yung answer niya. Dapat equal pa rin sila. So, same yung kanyang position. 5 plus 4 plus 3, 5 plus 4 plus 3. Pero kung mapapansin nyo, yung nakagroup dito is si 4 and 3. Dito, ginawa ng si 5 and 4. So, nilipat lang yung groupings. So, changing the groupings will not affect the SAP or the answer. Let's see. Pag sinolve natin yung nasa loob, you'll get 7. Then, you just add 5 plus 7. So, the answer here naman is 5 plus 4, that's 9. Add mo lang yung 3. Dapat equal daw sila. So, let's add. 5 plus 7 is 12. 9 plus 3 is 12. So, equal pa rin sila. Though we change the groupings. Okay? So, that's associative. In multiplication, same lang. Changing the groupings of the factors does not affect the product. So, ganun din siya. So, dito ang nakagroup natin is 2 times 7. Same yung arrangement niya, 2 times 7 times 3. Pero ang group na natin ay si 7 and 3. So, let's solve if they have the same value. So, 2 times 7 is 14 times 3. Sa kabila naman, 7 times 3 is 21 times 2 na lang. So, 14 times 3, that is 42. How about 2 times 21? Is that 42? Yes, exactly. So, they have the same answer. So, that is called associative property. Okay? Okay, so let's proceed to the next property, which is called distributive property. Okay, as you can see here, diretso na tayo sa example so that you will understand. So, for any integers A, B, and C, if you have C something like this, there is A which is being multiplied to the quantity of B plus C. The result would be like this. As you can see, A was being distributed kay B saka kay C. So take note, when two numbers have been added or subtracted and then multiplied by a factor, the result will be the same when each number is multiplied by the factor and the products are then added or subtracted. Medyo magulo. So let's see an example para you can understand it clearly. Okay? So, for example, I have 4 times the quantity of 2 plus 3. So, when you say the word distributive, it comes from the root word distribute. So, for us to simplify this number outside the parenthesis will be distributed here. Okay? Since there is a parenthesis, remember, distributive property involves multiplication. Okay? So, pag may parenthesis and you distribute for the number 4 here sa loob ng number na nasa loob ng parenthesis, you're going to multiply. Okay? So, 4 times 2. Yan. And then, plus, don't forget that, if it is addition here, you will going to use plus. If it is subtraction here, you're going to use minus. 4 times 3. Yan. Same lang daw yung magiging result niyan. As you can see, kaya nga distributive property, si 4, distribute kay 2 and 3, which you're going to multiply. So, let's see. Let's try to answer this one first. Nasa kabilang side, 2 plus 3 is 5, and then multiplied by 4, the answer is 20. So, the answer here should also be 20. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. So, 8 plus 12 is also 20. So, as you can see, they have the same answer. Another example. Okay? So, this is called distributive property. Sa minus naman tayo. So, 7 times the quantity of 5 minus 2. So, distribute natin. 7 times 5 minus, since the minus sign is in the being used. So, minus natin. 7 times 5 minus 7 times 2. So, dapat same sila ng answers sa the left and sa right. So, let's solve this one first. Excuse me. 5 minus 2 is 3 times 7. The other side is 7 times 5 is 35 minus 7 times 2, which is 14. So, 7 times 3 is 21. So, this should be also 21. What is 35 minus 14? Yes, that is also 21. So, that is called distributive property from the word distribute. Next property is called identity property. Okay? You as a student, your identity, paano ba nalalaman ang identification mo bilang estudyante? Siyempre, your ID. That's your identification. Okay? So, ngayon, wala pa tayong ID. So, since nasa pandemic pa tayo, so we're not allowed to do the face-to-face. Pero, in-elaborate ko lang that when you have identity property, meron kang pagkakakalandan. So, identity has also for addition and multiplication. So, unahin natin si identity property of addition. For any numbers A, when you add 0 to any numbers, the answer will always be the number that you added to 0. So, identity property of addition states that the sum of any number and 0 is a given number. 0 is the additive identity. So, what does it mean? Kahit ano daw na number na ini-add mo sa 0, ang sagot ay yung number na ini-add mo sa 0. Very simple. That's called identity property. Negative 5 plus 0, the answer is still negative 5. So, dito, kung ano in-add mo kay 0, which is 2, the answer is 2. Kung ano in-add mo kay 0, which is negative 5, the answer is negative 5. That is called identity property. Okay? So, any number added by 0, the answer is the number that you add from 0. Okay? So, paano naman siya sa multiplication? Hindi sila parehas. Hindi 0 pagdating sa multiplication, ha? Sa addition lang yung 0 na identity. Sa multiplication, yan. Identity property of multiplication states that the product of any number and 1 is the given number. What does it mean? This time, 1 is the multiplicative identity. Kahit ano daw na number na minultiply mo sa 1, ang sagot is yung number na minultiply mo. Okay? So, like 4 times 1, the answer is 4. Okay? Any number multiplied by 1, the answer is the number that you multiplied by 1. That is called identity. Siya at siya. Okay? Negative 8 times 1, that is still negative 8. 1 times 7, that is still 7. 1 times negative 2, that is still negative 2. So, that is called identity. Remember, 1 is the what? Multiplicative identity. So, hindi sila parehas. Sa addition, ang identity ay 0. Sa multiplication naman, ang multiplicative identity is 1. So, ulitin natin sa identity. For addition, any number added to 0, the answer is the number that you added to 0. Dito naman sa identity property of multiplication, any number that you multiply by 1, the answer is the number that you multiply by 1. So, kaya nga siya at siya. Next is inverse property. So, when you say inverse, kabaliktaran. In addition, yan, inverse property of addition states that the sum of any number and its additive inverse is 0. So, if you can still remember when you say additive inverse, that is the opposite. If you have positive, you get the negative of that. So, that is additive inverse. Let's have an example. If you have 5, what's the additive inverse of 5? That is negative 5. So, pag nag-add ka daw ng additive inverse, the answer will always be 0. Kaya nga inverse. Okay, so you have 1 positive, you have 1 negative, the sum will always be 0. Negative 12, what's the additive inverse of negative 12? That is positive 12. So whenever you add this, the answer will always be 0. Remember, the result when we take the sum of any number and its additive inverse is always 0. Ano naman yung inverse property when it comes to multiplication? Okay? Inverse property of multiplication states that the product of any number and its multiplicative inverse or reciprocal is 1. So, in this case, ang inverse na tinutukoy naman natin is this. Okay, 7. If you can still remember sa division ng fraction, how do you divide fraction? You get the reciprocal of the divisor. So, when you say reciprocal, 7, ang reciprocal niyan ay 1 over 7. Paano naging 1 over 7? Remember that all whole number has 1 as the denominator, pero hindi na natin siya nilalagay pag whole number na siya. So, 7 over 1, ang reciprocal niya, syempre, is 1 over 7. So, So, ganun lahat. Lahat ng whole number, ang reciprocal niya ay 1 over yung number na given. So, tatandaan nyo yun. Okay? So, multiplicative inverse, ang sagot daw ay 1. Paano naging 1? Ayan. Naaalala nyo pa. Paano mag-simplify? So, this is already cancelled. Diba? Because when you times this is 7 times 1, 1 times 7, 7 divided 7 is 1. Or, this is the simplest way. Cancel na yung numerator and denominator. So, what is left is 1. Okay? O, ito. Given na yung 1 over negative 9. So, get mo ito yung reciprocal. Anong kabaligtaran? That is negative 9 over 1. So, ang 1s, pag nasa denominator, hindi na siya nilalagay. So, simplify mo lang. So, cancel na si negative 9. The answer is 1. So, that is the multiplicative inverse. Remember, the result when we take the product of any number and its multiplicative inverse is 1. So, don't forget that. Okay? And the last property is called zero property. So, it states that the product of any number and 0 is always 0. So, any number multiplied by 0 is equal to 0. Let's have an example. A times 0, the answer is 0. Negative 15 times 0, the answer is 0. Why it's not negative? Remember, 0 doesn't have a sign. It's not negative, it's not also positive. So whenever you have an answer of 0, just write 0 for it. Okay? There's no negative 0. Okay, that's a 0 times 11, the answer is 0. 0 times negative 7, the answer is also 0. So that is zero property. The